They sent 3 Apache helicopters, a dozen armored tactical vehicles, and 100 elite special forces operators just to surround a local college dorm. Snipers were on every rooftop, laser sights cutting through the night rain, all aimed at one thing. My mechanical dog, Ruin, who was currently sitting on the pavement with a crushed titanium military drone in its jaws, patiently waiting for a 5-star review on the delivery app. I leaned against the brick wall of my workshop, taking a bite of a cold slice of pizza. "I told you to just drop off the package, boy," I muttered. "You didn't have to embarrass the entire United States Armed Forces." Ruin's tail wagged, a blur of carbon nanotube fiber that whipped through the air fast enough to shatter concrete. Let's rewind. My name is Kale. To the snobby, billionaire-backed professors at the Apex Institute of Technology, I'm a joke. A 0-credit scholarship kid who skips class to deliver food and tinker with scrap metal in the basement. They think the peak of engineering is a robot that can mop floors. They don't know that a month ago, the Genesis Architect system hardwired itself into my brain. The rules of the system were beautifully simple. Generate shock points by shattering people's understanding of reality, and use those points to unlock god-tier tech blueprints from 1,000 years in the future. I'm talking orbital kinetic strikes, dark matter reactors, and liquid metal exosuits. But to unlock the first real tier, I needed 50,000 shock points. And you don't get that by showing off at a science fair. You get it by stepping on the pride of the strongest people in the room. That morning, the head of robotics, Professor Vance, kicked down the door to my basement lab. He brought the dean and 2 security guards with him, looking down his nose at me like I was a rat in his pristine kitchen. "Pack your trash, Kale," Vance sneered, kicking a pile of my spare gears. "You've missed 3 weeks of my advanced robotics lectures. You're expelled. Leave the premises before I have you thrown out." I didn't even look up from the soldering iron. "I skipped your class, Vance, because your theories on bipedal stabilization are 30 years out of date. You teach garbage, so I put you in the trash where you belong." Vance's face went purple. "You insolent little punk. You build remote-controlled toys out of garbage. I have 3 PhDs. I design defense systems for the military." "Cool," I said, finally standing up. "Let's test that." I snapped my fingers. The shadows in the corner of the room didn't just move. They unfolded. Ruin stepped into the fluorescent light. To the naked eye, it looked like a heavily armored wolf forged from matte black vibranium, with eyes that glowed a cold, piercing blue. But the real terror was under the hood. A localized cold fusion reactor, magnetic levitation joints, and an AI processor that could hack the Pentagon before you could blink. Vance scoffed, though he took a step back. "A tin dog. Pathetic." "Ruin," I said calmly. "Show the professor what I think of his defense systems." I pointed at Vance's prized possession, a solid tungsten carbide combat drone prototype sitting on his cart. A single unit cost $2 million. Ruin didn't jump, simply vanished. A sonic crack echoed in the small room. In less than 1/10 of a second, Ruin was standing on top of Vance's cart. Its jaw unhinged, revealing rows of superheated, plasma-edged teeth. Ruin bit down on the solid tungsten drone. Crunch. The indestructible $2 million military prototype snapped in half like a dry biscuit. Sparks showered the room. Ruin casually spat the pieces at Vance's expensive leather shoes. The room went dead silent. The dean stopped breathing. The security guards reached for their guns, but their hands were shaking too hard to unholster them. Ding! Professor Vance's reality has collapsed. Shock points plus 2,000. Ding! Dean's worldview shattered. Shock points plus 1,500. "Expel me?" I whispered, walking up to Vance until I was inches from his face. "Your life's work just became chew toy for my delivery dog. Now get out of my lab. I have orders to fulfill." Vance ran. They all ran. And my shock points counter started ticking up beautifully. But 3,500 points wasn't enough. I needed 50,000. So, I took a premium delivery order that no one else would touch. A late-night drop-off to Fort Mercer, the most heavily guarded, experimental military base on the East Coast. "Ruin," I said, strapping a thermal bag of spicy chicken wings to its armored back. Take the direct route. Ignore the restricted airspace warnings. If their defense grid locks onto you, break it. Ruin's eyes flared crimson. It shot out of the basement tunnel like a railgun slug. 10 minutes later, all hell broke loose. Fort Mercer's billion-dollar Aegis radar system detected an incoming object moving at Mach 3, 2 feet off the ground. The base commander, General Cross, panicked. He scrambled interceptor drones, deployed anti-tank barricades, and initiated a base-wide lockdown. They sent an entire squad of their newest, heavily armed Boston Dynamics combat mechs to intercept. Ruin didn't even slow down. The military mechs fired automated stun nets. Ruin calculated their trajectories in a microsecond, contorted its liquid metal spine to slip through the gaps in the netting, and activated its localized EMP pulse. 30 multi-million-dollar combat mechs instantly short-circuited, freezing mid-step and toppling over like dominoes. Ruin casually trotted past them, walked right up to the heavily fortified barracks, bypassed a retinal scanner by flashing a high-res laser projection of the base commander's eye, which it had downloaded off the dark web on the way over, and dropped the thermal bag of wings at the feet of a terrified, open-mouthed private. Ding! Elite military strike team utterly humiliated. Shock points plus 10,000. Ding! General Cross is questioning his sanity. Shock points plus 15,000. Ding! Billion-dollar defense grid bypassed by a dog. Shock points plus 20,000. The points rained down like a digital lottery. My HUD flared blinding gold. Milestone reached. 50,000 shock points. Unlocking Tier 1. Godkiller Nanosuit and Orbital Strike override codes. A feral grin spread across my face as I felt the knowledge of 1,000 galaxies burn into my mind. I was no longer just a student. I was a walking, breathing extinction event for anyone who got in my way. Which brought me to now. Standing in the rain outside my dorm, surrounded by the United States military. A heavily armored Humvee pulled up, and General Cross stepped out, flanked by operators with assault rifles aimed right at my chest. "Son," the general barked, his voice trembling slightly as he looked at Ruin. "You have compromised a Tier 1 military installation with a toy. By order of national security, you are going to hand over the schematics, or you will disappear into a dark hole forever." I finished my pizza crust, tossed it into the trash can, and wiped my hands on my jeans. "General," I said, my voice echoing clearly over the sound of the rain and hovering helicopters. "My dog just embarrassed your entire base, and all it wanted was a 5-star rating. If you point those guns at me for one more second." I tapped my temple, activating the newly unlocked Godkiller tech. The air around me began to hum, warping with extreme electromagnetic heat. I'll show you what it looks like when I actually want to start a war. Chapter 2. Machining by Eye and Shattering Egos. The air around me warped, shimmering with raw electromagnetic heat. Every red laser sight trained on my chest violently flickered and died. The optics on the Special Forces rifles shattered. The engine of General Cross's billion-dollar armored Humvee sputtered, choked, and completely shut down. I hadn't even moved a muscle. This was just the passive radiation from the Godkiller tech I'd unlocked. General Cross's face went from pale white to a sickly shade of ash. He was a man used to giving orders that moved fleets, but right now, looking at a 19-year-old kid and a delivery dog that had just neutered his entire strike team without throwing a single punch, he realized he was fundamentally outmatched. He slowly raised his hand. "Stand down. Weapons safe. I repeat, weapons safe." The operators lowered their rifles, stepping back. "Smart choice, General," I said, walking past the line of elite soldiers. None of them dared to breathe. I stopped next to Cross, pulled a crumpled piece of thermal paper from my pocket, and slapped it against his chest. "That's the receipt for the spicy wings. Your private didn't tip. Next time, it comes out of your defense budget." I snapped my fingers. Ruin's eyes shifted back to a calm, icy blue. The dog trotted over, and we walked back to the dorms, leaving the absolute pinnacle of the United States military stranded in the rain. Ding! General Cross admits absolute defeat. Shock points plus 8,000. Ding! Special Forces Squad traumatized by a college dropout. Shock points plus 12,000. The points were sweet, but I needed millions if I wanted to unlock the orbital tech on page 2 of the Genesis system. The military base stunt was a good start, but I needed a bigger, more public stage. Fast forward to the next night. I was running a makeshift stall at the underground tech market, selling optimized scrap metal gadgets to engineering students to fund my raw materials. My stall had been open for 20 minutes when a group of old men in tailored suits shoved their way through the crowd. Leading them was Dr. Eris, a living legend. The guy practically wrote the modern textbook on automated warfare. Beside him was Professor Vance, looking like a whipped dog. Clearly, the military had hushed up the Fort Mercer incident, but the footage of Ruin moving at Mach speeds had leaked to the highest echelons of the academic elite. "You," Dr. Eris said, slamming his hands on my folding table. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, locked onto Ruin, who was casually resting its titanium chin on its paws. "Vance told me you bought this machine from a black market defense contractor. I don't believe him. The movement algorithms, the center of gravity stabilization, it's beyond anything humanity currently possesses." "Vance is an idiot," I said, not looking up from a circuit board I was soldering. "I built it. Now are you going to buy a localized Wi-Fi jammer? Or are you just here to block my foot traffic?" Eris pulled a customized, military-grade tablet from his jacket. "Prove it. If you have the intellect to build that beast, prove it. Here is an incomplete quantum stabilization equation that took my research team at the National Vanguard Labs 3 years and a supercomputer to reach a dead end on. Solve it." I finally looked up. I glanced at the screen. Thanks to the system's neural upgrades, my brain processed the data faster than light entering my retinas. "The answer is 4.73 recurring," I said, deadpan. "And the reason your supercomputer crashed is because your third variable is fundamentally flawed. You factored for standard gravity, completely ignoring the localized magnetic distortion caused by the quantum spin. It's a rookie mistake. Honestly, my dog could have calculated that while taking a leak." The tablet slipped from Dr. Eris's fingers, shattering on the pavement. The other elite professors gasped, clutching their chests like they were having simultaneous heart attacks. Ding! National Vanguard legends thoroughly humiliated. Shock points plus 5,000. Hey, quick pause. If you're enjoying watching me absolutely demolish the egos of billion-dollar military cronies and out-of-touch academic elites, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. It fuels the system and we're just getting started. Alright, back to the destruction. You calculated that in your head?" Eris stammered, his voice trembling. 2 seconds. You solved a generational bottleneck in 2 seconds. "I was chewing gum, so it slowed me down," I replied, packing up my stall. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go build another dog. The girls' dorm pays double for late-night boba tea deliveries, and Ruin doesn't like carrying pastel pink cups." They didn't leave. Instead, the most powerful minds in the country followed me back to my grimy basement workshop like lost ducklings. When they stepped inside, they expected to see a multi-million-dollar fabrication setup. Instead, they saw a rusty 3-axis CNC machine, a blowtorch, and piles of scrap titanium.
I grabbed a block of raw metal, tossed it onto the workbench, and fired up the cutter. "Wait!" Vance screamed. "Where are the blueprints? Where are your CAD models? You can't just freehand cut high-precision robotic joints. The tolerance margins are less than a micrometer. Blueprints are for people who don't have the final product permanently burned into their retinas," I said. I didn't use a ruler. I didn't use a laser guide. I just looked at the metal, and my hands moved in an absolute, terrifying blur. Sparks flew as I sliced, welded, and fused the parts together. Within 45 minutes, a second mechanical dog, sleeker, faster, built for pure stealth and urban traversal, sat completely assembled on the table. I called it Eclipse. It immediately stood up, synced with Ruin, and let out a low, synthesized metallic growl that made the professor's back up against the wall. Dr. Eris fell to his knees. Actual tears formed in his eyes. "It's perfect. The joints, the machining, it's hand-forged perfection. Kale." I will pay you $1 million right now for that machine. Just let me study it. Not for sale, I said, tossing Eclipse a thermal bag. She has boba to deliver. Eris grabbed my ankle. Then listen to me. Tomorrow is the National Tech Warfare Tournament. The prize isn't just money. The winner gets complete, unrestricted access to the military's underground hyperlab, plus a blank check for research funding. Enter the tournament. Please. The world needs to see what you can do. I stopped. The hyperlab. That facility had the rare earth materials I needed to craft the Tier 1 Godkiller suit, and a national broadcast with millions of viewers meant infinite shock points. I looked at Ruin. The dog tilted its head, its crimson eyes flaring with anticipation. All right, Dr. Eris. I smiled, a cold, dangerous expression that made the old man shiver. I'll enter your little tournament. But you might want to warn the other competitors. Warn them of what? Vance asked, swallowing hard. I picked up a massive, heavy, matte black tube from under my desk and began mounting it directly onto Ruin's back armor. It hummed with terrifying, suppressed voltage. Tell them I'm bringing an electromagnetic railgun to a robot fight.
Chapter 3. A Roomba with a Knife versus the Apocalypse. The National Tech Warfare Tournament was supposed to be the absolute pinnacle of human engineering. I walked into the grand stadium expecting to see mechs, lasers, and maybe a rogue AI or two. Instead, it looked like a high-budget nerd prom. MIT brought a 6-legged spider bot that moved at a blistering 5 miles per hour. Harvard proudly presented a drone that could identify different types of terrain while avoiding walls. Ooh, a flying Roomba with a camera. Terrifying. And let's not even talk about the Ivy League kid who basically built a remote-controlled trash can and duct-taped a kitchen knife to it. To make matters worse, the dean of my college had forced me to wear our official team uniform. It was a neon blue tracksuit with our college logo printed on the back. The logo was so massive I'm pretty sure it could be seen from the International Space Station. I looked like a walking billboard for a discount tire shop. But I didn't care. The stadium was packed with 10,000 people, military officials, tech CEOs, and top-tier researchers. To me, they weren't an audience. They were 10,000 walking, breathing shock point batteries just waiting to be harvested. When my name was called, a hush fell over the crowd. The kid in the neon tracksuit carrying a black military-grade crate. I dragged it to the center of the stadium stage, kicked the latch open, and stepped back. Ruin didn't just walk out. It stalked out. The stadium lights reflected off its matte black titanium plating. It took one look at the crowd, let out a deep, bass-heavy mechanical growl that vibrated the floorboards, and then casually trotted over to me, nuzzling its cold steel head against my knee like a puppy asking for a treat. The crowd went dead silent. The judges leaned so far forward over their desks I thought they were going to fall off. Ding! Stadium audience collectively forgets how to breathe. Shock points plus 3,000. I grabbed the mic. Hi, I'm Kale. This is Ruin. To keep things brief, his top speed is 120 miles per hour. His processing power makes your supercomputers look like pocket calculators, and he doesn't need to be charged because he runs on a localized cold fusion core. Oh, and he jumps. I didn't even give a verbal command. The system let me control Ruin via a neural link. With zero warning, Ruin's back legs coiled with magnetic tension. Bang! It launched 30 feet straight into the air, doing a perfect aerodynamic arc across the stadium. It landed silently on the judge's table, precisely picked up the head judge's gold-plated name tag in its razor-sharp teeth, leaped back across the arena, and dropped it at my feet. Total elapsed time, 2.1 seconds. The audience erupted. People were screaming. Billionaire tech investors were aggressively dialing their bankers. My shock point counter was spinning so fast it looked like a slot machine. But then General Cross, who was sitting in the VIP military row with a face like a slapped wet fish, grabbed a microphone. "Cute parlor tricks, son?" Cross boomed, his voice echoing through the stadium. "It jumps and fetches. But this is a warfare tournament. What happens when your metal toy takes a bullet? Can it fight? Because out on the battlefield, we don't need delivery boys. We need killers." Couldn't help it. I laughed. "General, are you really asking me if the machine that hacked your entire base can fight?" Cross's eye twitched. He signaled to a squad of heavily armed soldiers standing by the tunnel. "Bring it out." The soldiers dragged a massive, camouflaged military combat dog onto the stage. It was bulky, ugly, and moving with the grace of a broken shopping cart. The pinnacle of their engineering was, wait for it, strapping 2 fully loaded M4 assault rifles to its back. "Behold," I said into the mic, completely deadpan, "the military-industrial complex at work." They took a toaster and gave it a gun. The audience snickered. General Cross turned purple. "Destroy his machine," he barked at the military dog's operator. The military bot locked its targeting lasers onto Ruin. The crowd gasped, thinking they were about to watch my dog get turned into Swiss cheese. "Ruin," I whispered. "Disassemble." Ruin didn't bark. It just vanished into a blur of black metal. Before the military operator could even press the firing trigger on his remote, Ruin was already beside the camouflaged bot. Ruin's jaws unhinged. The hydraulic bite force of its teeth was enough to crush a diamond. It bit down directly on the military bot's reinforced titanium neck. Crack. A spray of sparks and hydraulic fluid erupted across the stage. Ruin wasn't done. Its front paw shot out, a 3-inch plasma blade sliding from its knuckles. With one swift motion, it sliced the wires connecting the M4 rifles, grabbed the exposed motherboard from the military bot's shredded chest, and physically ripped its spine out. The $10 million military bot collapsed into a pile of sparking, smoking garbage. Ruin stood over it, casually chewing on the motherboard like it was a piece of beef jerky. "Does anyone have a charger?" I asked the microphone. "I think the general's dog is dead." Ding. General Cross's soul has left his body. Shock points plus 15,000. Ding. The military-industrial complex is weeping. Shock points plus 20,000. I won the tournament instantly. Obviously, no one else even wanted to go on stage after that. The judges, professors, and VIPs immediately rushed the stage, swarming around Ruin like flies. Professor Vance and Dr. Eris were at the front, drooling over the joints and the metal plating. "Incredible," Dr. Eris muttered, tracing his hand over Ruin's back. "And what is this plastic tube mounted on top? Some sort of extra battery pack? It looks like a cheap toy." Before I could warn him, Vance's greedy, trembling hands reached for the heavy black tube I had mounted on Ruin's armor. "It feels so light." "Wait, is this a trigger?" "Vance, drop it," I yelled, stepping forward. But the idiot's finger twitched. It wasn't a battery pack. And it wasn't a toy. It was the fully loaded, prototype electromagnetic railgun I had built the night before. There was no explosion. Just a sharp, terrifying THWIP sound, followed instantly by the deafening crack of a sonic boom happening indoors. A hyper-accelerated tungsten slug, traveling at Mach 4, shot out of the barrel. It completely bypassed the laws of physics, tore through the air, and struck one of the massive steel support beams holding up the stadium's domed roof. The 3-foot-thick solid steel beam didn't just break. It evaporated, but it was an automatic railgun. Vance panicked and held the trigger down. THWIP, 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 THWIP. 80 rounds per second. A continuous, blinding blue line of plasma and tungsten traced across the stadium ceiling. Steel beams snapped like dry twigs. Concrete dust rained down. The deafening sound of crumbling architecture echoed through the arena as a massive, perfectly straight line of daylight suddenly pierced through the completely obliterated roof of the stadium. Vance dropped the gun like it was made of lava, falling onto his backside, his face completely devoid of blood. The entire stadium of 10,000 people was frozen in absolute, unadulterated terror. The roof was groaning, barely holding on by a thread. General Cross slowly looked at the vaporized steel beams, then at the smoking plastic toy on the ground, and finally at me. His jaw was hanging open so wide it practically unhinged. I scratched the back of my neck and looked at the gaping hole in the sky. "So," I said, breaking the silence, "are you guys gonna take that out of my prize money? Or?" Chapter 4. Nerf or nothing, but mostly apocalypse. Concrete dust rained down like dirty snow. The screech of bending steel echoed through the stadium. 10,000 people were completely frozen, staring up at the jagged, smoking hole in the roof where the midday sun was now shining through. Professor Vance was still on the floor, hyperventilating into a paper bag someone had handed him. General Cross didn't blink. He slowly uncrossed his arms, stepped over the smoldering remains of his $10 million military robot, and walked toward the little plastic tube lying on the stage. He looked at it like it was a live rattlesnake. "Son," Cross said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "tell me that isn't an electromagnetic railgun." "I mean, I could lie to you, General." I shrugged, brushing concrete dust off my neon blue tracksuit. "But the giant, vaporized hole in the ceiling kind of gives it away." Cross stared at the weapon. "It's encased in cheap plastic. It looks like a water gun." "Yeah, I ran out of titanium," I sighed. "I actually had to gut a discount Nerf rifle to use as the housing." "Don't worry. I spray painted it black so it looks tactical. Presentation is everything, right?" Cross didn't laugh. He crouched down, hovering his hand over the gun but too terrified to touch it. "A standard military-grade railgun requires a naval destroyer to generate enough power to fire a single shot. You're telling me you condensed a warship's power grid into a piece of plastic?" "Actually, the power grid is in the dog. The gun just draws from Ruin's fusion core," I explained casually. "And it doesn't just fire one shot." Cross looked up at me. "What is the fire rate?" 80 rounds per second. The entire front row of military brass and elite professors audibly gasped. 80, Dr. Eris whispered, his eyes bulging out of his skull. "An M16 assault rifle maxes out at 10 rounds a second before it melts or jams. A fully automatic AK-47 does maybe 14. 80 rounds of hyper-accelerated tungsten per second isn't a gun. It's a portable meteor shower." Ding. General Cross's entire understanding of ballistics has been vaporized. Shock points plus 4,000. Ding. Elite weapon designers collectively realize they are obsolete. Shock points plus 6,000. "How many rounds does it hold?" Cross demanded, his voice cracking. 300. "The projectiles are diamond-shaped, interlocking so they take up less space," I said, checking my nails. "Effective lethal range is about 1,000 meters. Give or take." Cross stood up slowly. He looked at the stadium roof, which was currently groaning and threatening to collapse entirely. He immediately grabbed his radio. "Evacuate the stadium. Get everyone out now," Cross barked. Then he turned to me, grabbing my shoulder with a grip like a vice. "You and that dog are coming with me. We are taking this to the Advanced Ballistics Research Institute." "Now, am I under arrest?" I asked. "Arrested?" Cross let out a breathless, manic laugh. "Son, if this tech is real, I'm going to make you the Secretary of Defense." 10 minutes later, we were in the back of a heavily armored convoy. But it wasn't just us. A caravan of about 50 black SUVs and college vans trailed right behind us. Every top-tier researcher, billionaire tech investor, and military official from the tournament was following us like a cult trailing their messiah. They were absolutely desperate to see this gun in action on a proper range. We arrived at the Institute. It was a massive underground concrete bunker designed for testing explosive ordnance. We walked into the primary viewing deck. It had 3-foot-thick ballistic glass and an entire wall of high-definition monitors meant to capture telemetry data, velocity, and impact force. The viewing deck instantly packed out. 50 of the brightest minds on the planet shoved each other out of the way just to get a good spot against the glass. It looked like Black Friday at an electronics store, except everyone had PhDs. Cross gently placed the railgun on a mechanical testing mount inside the firing chamber. He connected it to the telemetry sensors. "Before we fire," a cranky old professor from the back shouted. It was Dr. Vance's boss, the head of applied physics. "I call garbage. A railgun firing at Mach 4 with 80 rounds a second would melt the barrel in 2 seconds. The electromagnetic pulse alone would fry the user. The math doesn't work." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the crowd. They were geniuses, but their brains were trapped in current-era physics. They couldn't comprehend Tier 1 Genesis tech. "You're right," I said, grabbing a whiteboard marker. I walked over to the glass wall and started drawing. "Your math doesn't work, because you guys use archaic, linear electromagnetic generators. It's like trying to power a rocket ship with a hamster wheel." I didn't even have to think. My upgraded neural pathways guided my hand, sketching out the multidimensional, localized electromagnetic pulse generator I designed. It was beautiful, complex, asymmetrical, and entirely revolutionary. "My generator creates an inverted magnetic vacuum," I explained, tapping the glass. "It doesn't push the bullet. It pulls space around the bullet, entirely negating friction and thermal blowback. The barrel doesn't melt because the bullet technically isn't touching it." I tossed the marker over my shoulder. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. 50 professors were staring at the glass like they had just seen the face of God. One of the younger researchers frantically pulled out his phone, snapped a picture of my drawing, and apparently sent it to a group chat of international physicists. Seconds later, my brain felt like it was going to explode. Ding! Head of Applied Physics contemplates retiring. Shock points plus 2,000. Ding! International Physicist Group Chat is having a collective meltdown. Shock points plus 15,000. Ding! Quantum Mechanics rewritten. Shock points plus 25,000. The points were overflowing. I was rolling in them. I was already halfway to Tier 2 on the Genesis system. "General Cross," I said, leaning back against the console and giving him a knowing smirk. "Whenever you're ready, pull the trigger." Cross swallowed hard. He looked at the target, a stack of 10 solid military tank armor plates, bolted together at the end of the range. He pressed the firing button on the console. Inside the chamber, the little plastic gun hummed. And then the world ended. Here is Chapter 5. Let's break the system. Chapter 5. Melting tank armor and stealing jobs. There was no bang. Gunpowder makes a bang. A localized electromagnetic vacuum propelling a tungsten slug at Mach 4 makes a sound like the universe itself tearing in half like wet paper. A blinding, azure beam of pure kinetic energy flashed inside the reinforced firing chamber. The heavy ballistic glass of the viewing deck instantly spider-webbed, vibrating so hard my teeth rattled in my skull. At the end of the range stood 10 plates of reactive depleted uranium tank armor. Stuff designed to take a direct hit from an Abrams main battle tank and barely leave a scratch. The beam hit it. The armor didn't shatter. It didn't dent. It straight up liquefied. A perfectly circular hole, glowing white-hot like a miniature sun, was punched cleanly through all 10 layers of the armor. The tungsten slug kept going, burying itself 50 feet deep into the reinforced concrete bunker wall behind the target, turning the concrete into a molten crater of bubbling slag. The humming of the little plastic gun spooled down. Inside the viewing deck, the silence was so heavy it felt like gravity had been turned up to 100. Nobody breathed. Nobody blinked. The only sound was the sizzling of the molten metal on the range and the soft whir of Ruin's cooling fans as the dog sat faithfully by my side. General Cross was gripping the firing console so hard his knuckles were bone white. He slowly turned his head to look at me. His eyes were completely glassy. "That." Cross swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. "That was 1 round. Actually, that was a quarter-second burst." I corrected him, pulling a piece of lint off my neon tracksuit. "About 20 rounds. My finger slipped." The cranky head of applied physics who had called my math garbage a minute ago let out a strange, high-pitched squeak, clutched his chest, and genuinely fainted into the arms of a terrified grad student. "Medic!" someone yelled, but nobody else moved to help him. They were too busy staring at the glowing hole in the impenetrable armor. Ding! Depleted uranium armor has been depleted of its dignity. Shock points plus 10,000. Ding! The top brass of the U.S. military are questioning their life choices. Shock points plus 20,000. Ding! Applied physics professor literally passed out from the shock. Critical hit. Shock points plus 15,000. My HUD was practically a supernova of golden notifications. I hit the milestone. Milestone reached, 150,000 shock points. Unlocking Tier 2. Aegis Liquid Metal Exo-Armor and Orbital Satellite Hack Protocol. By the way, if you're enjoying watching me turn the most advanced military technology on the planet into absolute Swiss cheese, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. The algorithm loves it, and frankly, so does the system. Alright, back to the panic attack in the bunker. Dr. Eris pushed his way to the front of the crowd, his tailored suit completely ruined by sweat. He slammed his hands against the spider-webbed glass. The thermal dispersion, Eris yelled, looking at the telemetry data on the screens. It's impossible. The gun is made of discount plastic, but the internal temperature didn't even breach 90 degrees. The energy efficiency is 99.9%. Do you understand what this means? It means my plastic won't melt, I said deadpan. It means you've solved infinite clean energy. Eris screamed, practically pulling his own hair out. The weapon is a byproduct. If we scale up that inverted magnetic vacuum generator, we could power the entire eastern seaboard with a reactor the size of a mini-fridge. You could put the entire fossil fuel industry out of business by next Tuesday. The billionaire tech investors in the back of the room suddenly perked up. You could visibly see the dollar signs flashing in their eyes. Cell phones were immediately whipped out. Deals were being brokered in hushed, panicked whispers. But General Cross stepped between me and the crowd. His shock was fading, quickly being replaced by the cold, calculating greed of a military commander who just found the ultimate trump card. Dr. Eris, back off, Cross growled, his hand resting on his sidearm. This isn't an energy project. This is a Class A national security asset. Son, as of this moment, the United States government is officially confiscating that weapon, the dog, and all your blueprints under the Patriot Act. The crowd gasped. Cross signaled, and a dozen heavily armed military police officers filed into the viewing deck, forming a perimeter around me. I looked at the guards. Then I looked at Cross. Couldn't help it. I started laughing. Confiscate. I chuckled, shaking my head. General, you just watched a plastic toy obliterate your strongest armor. You think pointing standard issue 9mm pistols at me is a solid tactical decision. You're a civilian, Kale, Cross barked, stepping closer. You're smart, but you're flesh and blood. You can't fight an entire army. Hand over the override codes for the dog. Flesh and blood? I repeated, tasting the words. I smiled. Yeah, about that. I triggered the Tier 2 Genesis system. I didn't reach for a weapon. I didn't give Ruin a command. I just let the newly unlocked Aegis Liquid Metal Exo-Armor Protocol deploy. From the metallic watch on my wrist, a wave of pitch black, liquid nanometal suddenly erupted. It didn't just cover my skin. It bonded to my nervous system. It crawled up my arm, over my torso, and wrapped around my head in a fraction of a second, forming a sleek, demonic-looking combat suit with glowing azure optics that matched Ruin's eyes. The sheer kinetic force of the suit deploying created a shockwave that knocked General Cross flat on his back and shattered the rest of the ballistic glass in the room. I stood there, a towering phantom of futuristic armor, the room's red emergency lights reflecting off my pitch-black plating. I raised my hand, a high-frequency energy blade, vibrating hot enough to cut through the fabric of space-time, hissed to life from my gauntlet. You want my dog, General? My voice boomed, digitally synthesized and layered with an intimidating, metallic echo. Come and take him. Chapter 6. Bulletproof Marshmallows and Orbital Hijacking. The dozen military police officers in the room didn't even think. Training took over and they opened fire. 12 standard issue 9mm service weapons unloaded at point-blank range. In a normal world, I would have been turned into a human cheese grater. But inside the Tier 2 Aegis liquid metal exo-armor, the laws of physics were essentially just gentle suggestions. The bullets struck my pitch-black plating and didn't even ricochet. The nanometal rippled like water, catching the supersonic lead projectiles, absorbing their kinetic energy, and then casually spitting them out onto the floor. Clink, clink, clink. felt like being pelted with stale marshmallows. I let out a heavy, synthesized metallic sigh that vibrated the walls. "Really, guys?" I asked, my robotic voice dripping with disappointment. "I just melted tank armor with a plastic tube, and your backup plan is handguns? What's next?" Sternly worded letters. A rolled-up newspaper. Before they could reload, I moved. I didn't run. I essentially glided. The Aegis suit's microthrusters fired, and I was in the middle of their squad in a millisecond. I didn't throw a punch. That would have accidentally turned them into mist. Instead, I just walked through them. I grabbed their rifles and handguns, the immense heat from my gauntlets instantly melting their weapons into useless puddles of slag right in their hands. The elite guards screamed, dropping the molten metal and scrambling backward, tripping over each other to get away from the glowing demon in the room. Real quick, if you are enjoying me completely dismantling the pride, joy, and budget of the world's most powerful military, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and leave a like. The system feeds on your shock points too, and we're about to take this to space. Literally. Okay, back to the absolute disrespect. General Cross was backed against the shattered glass, his face completely devoid of color. But to his credit, the man was stubborn. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick, encrypted satellite phone, and slammed his thumb onto a glowing red button. "Command!" Cross roared into the phone. "This is a code black. We have a hostile, localized hyperthreat at the Institute. Initiate Protocol Icarus. I want a surgical orbital strike on this grid coordinate right now. Turn this entire bunker to ash." The billionaire tech investors in the room collectively lost their minds, screaming and diving under the heavy steel desks. Dr. Eris started praying in a language I didn't recognize. Cross was literally calling down an orbital kinetic bombardment to wipe me out, sacrificing himself and everyone in the room just to stop the tech from leaving the base. An orbital strike? I laughed. The sound was terrifying through the suit's vocoder. "General, didn't anyone tell you? My system just updated. I activated the second half of my Tier 2 unlock, Orbital Satellite Hack Protocol. I didn't need a computer. The Aegis suit was a computer. My consciousness synced directly with the electromagnetic waves bouncing through the atmosphere. I felt my mind shoot up into the stratosphere, pinging the U.S. military's top-secret Icarus satellite network. The encryption was supposed to be uncrackable. It took my system exactly 0.4 seconds to slice through it like warm butter. I raised my glowing gauntlet and snapped my fingers. Instantly, every single high-definition monitor in the viewing deck flickered. The telemetry data of my railgun vanished. Instead, all 50 screens displayed a live, high-definition feed from low Earth orbit. It was a massive, multi-billion-dollar military satellite equipped with tungsten rods from God, kinetic weapons designed to drop from space and hit with the force of a tactical nuke. And right there, blinking in bright red letters across the military's own live feed, were the words, "Administrator override. New user, Kale. Target acquired. General Cross's encrypted phone." Cross froze. The phone slipped out of his trembling hand and clattered to the floor. You hacked Icarus," Cross whispered, his entire worldview shattering into a million irreparable pieces. "That network is air-gapped. It's quantum encrypted. It's mine now," I interrupted. "And I have a kinetic tungsten rod currently locked onto the GPS coordinates of that phone by your foot. If I twitch my pinky finger, this entire bunker becomes a smoking crater, and I'll be the only one walking out of it without a scratch." The room was so quiet you could hear the billionaires sweating. Ding. General Cross accepts his new reality as your subordinate. Shock points plus 25,000. Ding. The United States orbital defense grid has been hijacked by a teenager. Shock points plus 50,000. Ding. Tech billionaires realize their money means absolutely nothing here. Shock points plus 30,000. My shock point counter was going absolutely nuclear. I was swimming in points. The faceplate of my Aegis armor slid back, retracting into the collar to reveal my completely calm, slightly bored face. I reached down, picked up the molten remains of a handgun, and tossed it into a trash can. Now, I said, looking around the room at the terrified elites of the world. I came here to show off my dog, deliver some boba tea, and maybe win a prize. Instead, you guys tried to rob me, shoot me, and drop a space laser on my head. Dr. Eris slowly peeked out from under a desk, adjusting his crooked glasses. So, what do you want, Kale? Simple, I smiled. I pointed at General Cross. General, I am keeping this orbital satellite. Consider it compensation for my ruined neon tracksuit. Secondly, you are going to open up the military's Tier 1 restricted supply vault, and you're going to let me take whatever raw materials I want. I have some upgrades to build. Cross didn't argue. He couldn't. He just nodded numbly. And third, I said, turning to the billionaires, my college delivery fees just went up. I expect a tip. A big one. But before anyone could reach for their checkbooks, the encrypted satellite phone on the floor suddenly rang. It wasn't a standard military ringtone. It was an ominous, deep, pulsing chime. Cross stared at it in sheer horror. That's the red line? Cross whispered, his face turning an entirely new shade of pale. Only one person has that number. I raised an eyebrow. The Aegis Armor's AI immediately scanned the incoming signal. Warning. Incoming transmission from the Global Defense Coalition Apex Command. Location. Unknown. I picked up the phone and hit speaker. Hello, I said. A voice, heavily distorted and dripping with calm, unnatural authority, echoed through the bunker. Kale of the Apex Institute. We have monitored your little demonstration. The Aegis Armor. The Orbital Hijack. Impressive for a child playing with toys. But you have just stepped onto a board where you do not know the rules. Who is this? I asked, my eyes narrowing. We are the architects, and you are holding stolen technology. We are giving you exactly 24 hours to surrender yourself and the Genesis system, or we will show you what a real extinction event looks like. The line went dead. I looked at my HUD. The system was flashing a massive, blood-red warning across my vision. Alert. Alien protocol detected. Enemy architects confirmed. I smiled. The military was just the tutorial. The real game had just begun. Chapter 7. Building a mech in a bodega. We are the architects, and you are holding stolen technology. The voice on the phone didn't just sound arrogant. It sounded like it owned the concept of arrogance. I crushed the satellite phone in my gauntlet, turning it into a handful of sparking dust. General Cross was hyperventilating again. Do you have any idea who that was? He choked out. The Global Defense Coalition is a myth. A ghost story they tell at the Pentagon to scare 4-star generals. They don't exist. Well, Cross, I said, dusting off my hands. The ghost just threatened to end the world because of my dog. So, I'm going to need to borrow your supply vault. Now. Real quick, if you want to see me take on a shadowy cabal of global elites using weapons I built out of spare parts and pure spite, you know what to do. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the apocalypse. Okay, let's go shopping. 20 minutes later, Cross personally escorted me into the depths of Fort Mercer's Black Vault. It was a cavernous, climate-controlled bunker holding the most highly classified materials on Earth. Pallets of refined vibranium weave, drums of liquid plasma, and crates of unstable quantum cores. It looked like a billionaire's doomsday prep basement. I walked down the aisles, tossing things into Ruin's expanding dimensional storage backbasket like I was shopping for groceries. I'll take 3 crates of the synthetic nervous tissue, I muttered, tossing them in. A gallon of thermal paste. Oh, and is this weaponized dark matter? Nice. I'll take the whole pallet. Dr. Eris, who had tagged along, was furiously taking notes, his hands shaking. Kale, what are you building? The Aegis armor is already invincible against conventional weapons. Conventional? Yes, I replied, loading a highly volatile fusion detonator into Ruin's jaws for safekeeping. But whoever those architects are, they aren't using conventional toys. The Genesis system warned me about an alien protocol. That means they have tech that makes my orbital strike look like a firecracker. I need an upgrade. My shock point counter was sitting comfortably at over 300,000. I opened the system HUD. Milestone reached, 250,000 shock points. Unlocking Tier 3, Leviathan-class Titan Mech Core and Quantum Field Disruptor. I grinned. Let's build a monster. I didn't stay at the military base. I didn't trust them not to try and nuke me while I slept. Instead, I had Ruin transport 3 tons of classified military assets to the safest place I knew. My uncle's abandoned bodega in the shady part of the city. The aesthetic was perfect. Outside, it looked like a boarded-up convenience store that sold expired chips. Inside, thanks to the Aegis suit's fabrication mode, I turned it into a hyper-advanced assembly line in under 2 hours. I didn't sleep. The system's neural enhancements meant I didn't need to. My hands moved in a blur of liquid nanometal and plasma torches. I was welding dark matter containment cells to titanium endoskeletons while casually eating a bag of stale Doritos I found on a shelf. By sunrise, the bodega was humming with so much raw energy that the streetlights outside were exploding from the localized electromagnetic interference. I stood back and admired my work. It wasn't a suit of armor. It was a Leviathan. Standing 18 feet tall, crammed into the back room of the bodega, was a bipedal combat mech painted entirely in void black radar-absorbent plating. It didn't have clunky joints or hydraulic hoses. It was held together by localized gravity fields. Its core was a pulsating orb of weaponized quantum energy. I called it Odin. System, I said out loud. Sync Odin to my neural network. Syncing. Complete. Leviathan-class Titan ready for pilot integration. I didn't even have time to climb into the cockpit. The bodega's proximity alarms, which I had hardwired into the city's traffic light cameras, started screaming. I checked the monitor. 3 blocks away, the sky literally tore open. Not a metaphor. A jagged, bleeding tear in the fabric of space appeared above a busy intersection. From the portal dropped 3 figures. They weren't human. At least not entirely. They wore seamless, glowing white armor that looked like it was grown rather than built. They didn't walk. They hovered inches above the asphalt. And in their hands they held weapons that made my railgun look like a water pistol. The architects had arrived. And they were exactly on time. Attention, primitive. One of them broadcasted, its voice bypassing my ears and echoing directly inside my skull. We have traced the Genesis anomaly to this sector. Surrender the tech, or we will erase this entire city block from the timeline. They weren't bluffing. The lead figure raised its weapon, and the air around it began to distort, erasing the color from the surrounding buildings as if ripping the data right out of reality. I looked at Ruin, who was growling, its plasma teeth bared. I looked at the massive, 18-foot Titan crouching in the dark. I tapped the side of my head, activating my comms to broadcast on all open military and civilian frequencies. I wanted everyone to hear this. You guys really came all the way from another dimension just to tell me to hand over my toys? I said, my voice echoing out of the bodega's PA system and across the city. The architects turned their glowing visors toward my storefront. I've got a better idea, I said. The reinforced steel doors of the bodega exploded outward. Bricks, dust, and shattered glass rained into the street as Odin stepped out into the morning light. I was strapped into the pilot seat, my Aegis armor fully synced with the mech's controls. Through the Titan's external speakers, my synthesized voice boomed out with enough bass to crack the pavement. Let's see if your shiny white armor is bulletproof. Chapter 8. Apple Store Aliens and Time Erasure. The 3 architects floated in the middle of the intersection, their glowing white armor making them look like incredibly angry Apple Store employees from the 31st century. When my 18-foot, void-black Odin mech stepped out of the bodega, crushing a parked Honda Civic under its massive foot, they didn't even flinch. The lead architect simply raised a hand. Primitive, the voice echoed in my skull again. You encase yourself in crude metal. We bend the fabric of reality. Your resistance is a statistical error. From the architect's palm, a beam of pure, silent, gray light shot toward me. It wasn't a laser. It was an erasure beam. As it passed through the air, the falling rain simply ceased to exist. It wasn't vaporized. The timeline was altered so the rain was never there to begin with. Odin, I said, my voice perfectly calm inside the cockpit. Quantum field disruptor. Maximum output. The core in Odin's chest pulsed with a violent, violet light. A hexagonal energy shield flared to life just inches in front of the mech. The gray erasure beam hit it, and for a split second, the universe held its breath. The shield screamed, bending under the weight of paradoxical physics. But it held. I smirked. Statistical error? Buddy, I'm the whole virus. I slammed the thrusters forward. Odin didn't just run. The mech used localized gravity manipulation to pull the street toward us. I closed the distance of 3 city blocks in 0.2 seconds. Before the lead architect could lower his hand, Odin's massive titanium fist caught him square in the chest. There was a thunderous sonic boom. The impact shattered the sound barrier, sending a shockwave that blew out every window for a mile. The architect was launched backward like a skipping stone, crashing straight through a skyscraper, out the other side, and into a mountain 3 miles away. The other 2 architects finally reacted, their visors flashing red. But before they could aim their weapons, a streak of black metal blurred past them. Ruin. My dog had been waiting. Moving at Mach 5, Ruin didn't go for a bite. It deployed its high-frequency plasma blade, spinning like a buzzsaw. It cleanly severed the right arm of the second architect. Instead of blood, blinding white energy spewed from the wound. The architect let out a digital, screeching roar of pain. You wield the forbidden core! The third architect screamed, its voice losing that calm, arrogant edge. The Genesis system is not human technology. It is a rogue architect seed. You are an anomaly. You cannot be allowed to exist. A twist. The Genesis system wasn't from human future. It was theirs. No wonder they were so mad I was using it to build food delivery drones. Sorry. I laughed through the external speakers. Finders keepers. But hey, if you want it back so badly, come and claim it. The third architect raised both hands to the sky. The jagged portal above the city didn't just stay open. It ripped wide, tearing a hole in the clouds the size of Manhattan. And from that hole descended a Dreadnought. It was a ship so massive it blocked out the sun. A geometric nightmare of glowing white metal and humming energy cannons. Millions of alien weapons began to charge, locking onto my exact coordinates. Odin was strong, but against a ship the size of an island, I was going to need a bigger gun. I checked my shock point counter. I was at 350,000. To unlock Tier 4 reality override, I needed an even million. I needed points. Fast. And the only way to get 1,000,000 shock points in 30 seconds was to show this to the whole planet. We are entering the absolute endgame, guys. If you want to see me humiliate a galactic dreadnought, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's get this video to 1,000,000 likes. Back to the final boss. Chapter 9. The Global Livestream. I activated the Aegis Suit's Orbital hack protocol. I already owned the US military satellite grid, so it was child's play to bounce the signal into the civilian network. In a fraction of a second, I hijacked every screen on Earth. The massive billboards in Times Square stopped showing soda commercials. The screens in Shibuya Crossing went black. Every smartphone, every laptop, every TV in every living room, bar, and military bunker on the planet suddenly switched to a live, high-definition feed from Odin's optical sensors. Testing, testing. Is this thing on? My synthesized voice echoed out of 8 billion devices simultaneously. In the corner of the screens, I put a little picture-in-picture feed of myself sitting in the cockpit, wearing my glowing Aegis armor, eating the last Dorito. Hey, Earth, I said casually, pointing up at the apocalyptic dreadnought currently blotting out the sky. Name's Kale, local college dropout and part-time delivery guy. As you can see, we have a bit of an alien invasion happening over Sector 4. The government's military is currently hiding under their desks, so I'm going to handle this. I paused for dramatic effect as the dreadnought's main cannon began to glow with blinding, world-ending power. Watch closely, I smiled. I'm only going to do this once. The global reaction was instantaneous. Ding! 8 billion humans realize aliens are real. Shock points plus 2 million. Ding! The entire human race watches a teenager mock an alien dreadnought. Shock points plus 5 million. Ding! Global religious and scientific paradigms shattered simultaneously. Shock points plus 10 million. My HUD literally broke. The numbers scrolled so fast they turned into a solid block of golden light. Milestone reached. 1 million shock points. Unlocking Tier 4. Administrator reality override. The Dreadnought fired. A beam of concentrated antimatter, wide enough to vaporize the entire city, shot down from the sky. It hit Odin directly, but it didn't burn. It didn't destroy, because Tier 4 didn't just give me better armor. It made me the admin of localized reality. I raised Odin's hand. The antimatter beam froze mid-air. The kinetic energy, the heat, the destructive force. I could see it all as glowing lines of code suspended in space. Delete, I whispered. The beam dissolved into harmless, sparkling blue data flakes, showering over the city like digital snow. Up in the Dreadnought, you could practically feel the aliens collectively wetting their glowing white pants. My turn, I said. Chapter 10. 5-star rating. The conclusion. I didn't shoot a missile back. That was too primitive. Instead, I used the administrator override to target the Dreadnought's core mainframe. I pushed my consciousness through the data streams, bypassing their million-year-old quantum firewalls as easily as kicking open a wooden door. Let's do a little redecorating, I smirked. Every light on the massive Dreadnought flickered and turned from pure white to a deep, humiliating neon pink. The terrifying hum of their engines was replaced by a massive, bass-boosted loop of elevator music broadcasting across the city. The third architect, the one still hovering in the street, stared up at his mothership in absolute horror. What are you doing? The architect stammered, its telepathic voice shaking. I'm reformatting your ship, I said. Congratulations. You guys are now the world's largest, most expensive flying billboard for my delivery service. Across the belly of the Dreadnought, massive holographic letters ignited, visible from space. Kale's Express Delivery. Under 30 minutes or your money back. The Dreadnought's weapon systems forcefully powered down. The portal above them began to aggressively suck the ship backward, their own navigation systems hijacked to force a tactical retreat. Before the ship was pulled entirely back into the rift, I commanded Odin to reach out and grab the third architect by its glowing white helmet. I lifted him until he was eye level with the mech. Go back and tell your bosses, I whispered, making sure the live mic was broadcasting to the entire planet. Earth is my territory now. If you ever come back here, I'm going to turn your entire homeworld into a crypto mining rig. Do you understand me? The architect didn't say a word. It just nodded frantically. I tossed him into the portal right as it snapped shut, leaving the sky perfectly clear and blue. Silence fell over the city. Then, slowly, deafening cheers erupted from the streets, from the screens, from every corner of the globe. I had just saved the planet, humiliated an advanced alien race, and permanently asserted dominance over the US military, all before lunch. I powered down Odin, the massive mech folding into a compact, metallic cube that attached to my belt. I dropped back down to the street. Ruin trotted up to me, tail wagging, dropping a miraculously unharmed thermal bag at my feet. My phone buzzed. It was an alert from the Genesis system. But it wasn't a blueprint this time. System update. The Galactic Senate has placed a 5 trillion universal credit bounty on your head. New quest added. Deliver an explosive payload to the Senate Prime headquarters. ETA 3 days. I looked at the notification, then down at Ruin. I couldn't help but crack a massive grin. Well, boy, I said, tossing him a piece of beef jerky. Looks like we're expanding the delivery zone. And that is how a simple delivery robot dog became the universe's biggest threat. If you guys want to see the next arc where we take the fight to the Galactic Senate and turn their empire into scrap metal, smash that like button, drop a comment saying Delivery OMW, and make sure you're subscribed. See you in the next one. Keep leveling up.